You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Dr. Chuck Keeney. He is a West Virginia historian, author of The Road to Blair Mountain, which is about the fight to preserve that historical area there. And so, in the last segment, you just condensed decades into like 15 minutes, so that was really good. That was really really that was a really good. Yeah, you must have been. You said you've been on a lot of podcasts before talking about this, so I could tell you've had some practice there. Before we actually kind of get into the fight, why is it important to you that folks know this history? Obviously, like you fought, like David said on the other side of the break, you fought some of the most powerful people in West Virginia to keep kind of this historical site for its historicity and for future generations to learn from it. Why is it important that people know this history and that we don't allow it to be taken from us by politicians and bosses?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why it's important. History, when you look at it unflinchingly, it makes people uncomfortable. There's no, we always want to whitewash history in America, and you can say whitewash definitely in racial terms, but also, of course, in terms of labor, in terms of a lot of other things. We like to sweep things under the rug, whether you're talking about Native American removal or the history of white supremacy, or whether you're talking about labor and unions. And if you are anti-union, as many of the powers in the state have been, you don't want people to understand the significance of labor unions, and you don't want people to understand the lengths to which companies will go in order to, for lack of a better term, screw the working man. And how far they will go to maintain control. And that's one of the reasons why the coal industry itself not only sought to take the industry or the history out of books, but to blast the very spot where that history had taken place. Like I said before, had West Virginians really known their history, then they wouldn't vote the same way that they vote. They wouldn't have the same worldview that they have. So it's very important, not just to identity. It's very important to our regional and cultural identity, but it's also important to really understand what America is and what America can become by understanding these conflicts. And you have to understand these conflicts and look at them unflinchingly, the good and bad aspects of it. I don't want to romanticize this history, because it was, after all, people killing one another. But you also, at the same time, want people to understand that it's complex, and people were fighting for their rights, their constitutional rights. My great-grandfather said that the Battle of Blair Mountain was about reestablishing the Bill of Rights. It was about reestablishing the Constitution, because their constitutional rights were denied them. And people need to understand that a corporation can crush a man's rights every bit as much as a government can. If you're on the conservative end of the spectrum, you're always saying big government, big government, big government. That's going to take our rights away. But big business can also take away your rights. I believe workers that are working for Amazon right now, are in their own struggle. And we need to understand that you have to fight for every inch that you get, and that never stops. In many ways, the Battle of Blair Mountain never ended. It just relocates to new places. And so people are continuously fighting that. And you need to understand those struggles in order to understand that your struggle is not just the here and now, but it's a thread that's been taking place over time.
Right. And
so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what you said with the conservatives and government, and tying it into big business as well, and in many cases in conjunction, big business with government, as was the case there, and as is the case still to today. But something that you said, and doing research before we came on, you talk about blasting the history, and I think it's important to point out, and maybe you could speak a little bit to it, about that kind of got glossed over. When you said blasting the history, you meant literally.
Yes.
Not figuratively speaking. We mean there was folks wanting to come in and just completely strip mine the entire area, as well as put in, I believe it was a National Guard reserve there, and all of this wonderful stuff to make West Virginia so much greater.
Right. Yeah, we weren't just fighting the coal industry and the political system, but we were also fighting the military-industrial complex.
Exactly.
In all of that. So we had the whole team lined up against us, so to speak, in West Virginia, and they wanted to use mountaintop removal to blast the tops of these mountains. You really have to fly over southern West Virginia and parts of eastern Kentucky to really understand, to get an appreciation for the damage that has been done to central Appalachia because of mountaintop removal. These mountaintop removal sites are vast. Some of them are 4,000 acres. And so they wanted to literally erase the history by blasting the place. And we must understand that battlefields, I feel, are sacred landscapes, and they you have to actually kind of walk on that soil and be on. If you're on that mountain and you're looking down the slope and you're at a place where they had a foxhole and defensive entrenchments, and you're thinking about what would it take to get a man to climb up this hill with a machine gun bearing down on him, and he's not a trained soldier. What would it take for you to grab a gun and go into the woods and charge up a hill when people are shooting at you with a machine gun? How desperate would you have to be? And you kind of have to go to the place and see it and feel it and kind of smell the air in order to really kind of fully grasp the gravity of that situation. So that's why you preserve the place. And we had a tough battle over this. Because a lot of coal miners didn't understand why we wanted to preserve the history, because they themselves have been taught an alternative reality in the textbooks, and they think that their jobs are dependent. Mountaintop removal, of course, actually is bad for employment because it uses half the amount of miners as underground mining does. So it has contributed to more unemployment in the region, not more employment, more unemployment, and it devastates the water. And there are all kinds of environmental reasons, but so we had to deal with a lot of the people not really understand what we were doing, and we had to deal with a lot of other issues. The group I was in charge of, Friends of Blair Mountain, I got named the president there 10 years ago. And I had no experience with activism, by the way, when I got involved in this. None. I'd never even been to a protest before. I was apolitical, pretty much. Not that I didn't have political views, but I wasn't an activist by any stretch of the imagination. And suddenly I found myself in the middle of this huge controversy, fighting, the industry that has run the state for a century. And we had to find unique ways in order to win. Because we were immediately labeled as environmental extremists, where they would say, we're a bunch of tree huggers, we're a bunch of hippies. All we want to do is go up on top of the mountain, have a drum circle, and sing Kumbaya, all that kind of stuff. And so we had to fight that stigma and get people to understand the history. I refer to this as identity reclamation, as you have mining reclamation in West Virginia. We were trying identity reclamation, in that we were trying to change the attitudes of people towards preserving this history. And we were able to do so. We also had to go through a bunch of legal battles. We had to go through the West Virginia Surface Mine Board. We had to find violations of the law that coal companies were making and hold them accountable. We had to make alliances with other groups like the United Mine Workers and even like the Sierra Club and environmental groups, and try to bridge that gap. One of the things I hope people get from my book is there has been, odds, like serious conflict between environmental groups and industrial labor unions over the years. You may saw, with the Dakota Access Pipeline, a lot of environmentalists on the left want to stop it, but the AFL-CIO doesn't. Richard Trumka decried Biden's decision to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. Right. And both of those groups are supposed to be under the umbrella of the left, but they're often at odds with one another. And what we were able to do is we were able to bridge that divide and bring environmentalists and industrial unionists together. And when people read the book, I hope that they understand that that's what we had to do and see that as a potential roadmap for activism in the future.
So you think that was kind of your key to winning the preservation of that historical site, was bringing together the labor movement and the kind of environmental left, so to speak?
Right. Blair Mountain was the common ground upon which we found. And you have to find that common ground because if you're divided, you fall.
Right.
And so you have to bring these groups together. And it's not easy.
The North Alabama DSA holds a necessities drive every Saturday, and that means this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW Local 558 Union Hall on Clinton Avenue, right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805 in Huntsville. So if you're in the area, you want to drop off some clothes, some non-perishable food items, blankets, PPE, whatever, then swing by the IBEW Union Hall, right across from Yellowhammer Brewing and Campus 805 on Clinton Avenue from 3 to 5 p.m. this Saturday and every Saturday. All donations are forwarded to the Manna House. Follow at DSA North Alabama on Twitter for more information. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments that you can watch throughout the week. If you don't want to watch the whole show, just one thing maybe piques your interest, you can go watch it there. We upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. You can find our work, and you can get yourself one of these nice union-made hats with a nice union bug right here beside our logo. I love it. It's really, it's a really good hat, just aside from it having our logo on it. It's really nice. I like it. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.